This video is an overview of unreliable guidelines, reliable sources and marginalized communities in French, English, and Spanish Wikipedia, which is the final report of the Art+Feminism research project Reading Together, Reliability and Multilingual Global Communities. This project took place between September 2020 and March 2021, and we are Melissa Tamani, Amber Berson, and Monika Sengul-Jones, the lead researchers of the project and the authors of the report.
We started the research thanks to the WikiCred Grants Initiative. Our goal was to provide insight on how definitions and interpretations of the concept of reliable sources impact coverage of marginalized communities on Wikipedia. This categorization includes, but is not limited to, cis and transgender women, non-binary people, non-Western communities, LGBTIQ+, and BIPOC communities. Reading Together addressed Wikipedia's information gaps by interrogating what constitutes a reliable source on English, French, and Spanish Wikipedias, and how source authority is negotiated among editors involved in these communities.
Our project had 3 parts: qualitative research of the guidelines, a series of community conversations focused on the 3 languages, and the production of a report with findings and recommendations for a more equitable Wikipedia. We began by asking what the guidelines are on reliable sources in the English, French, and Spanish Wikipedias. How is a reliable source defined in practice? What is the impact of these guidelines on content about marginalized communities in these 3 Wikipedias? And to address these questions, we leveraged Art+Feminism's vast network of hundreds of information activists who have participated in the Wikimedia movement. Our study combined interpretive analysis of the guidelines in situ with reported experiences gleaned from 3 town hall community conversations about the reliable source guidelines and editing. We covered in our report first interpretations and in-depth analysis of the guideline pages themselves in English, French, and Spanish. And all of these are detailed at length in the report. And I'll scroll down to it now in the screen share. Each section summarizing the overview of the guidelines provides a table that summarizes the background and contents of each language version. Our findings are a result of this qualitative research and the community conversations. And we read together how the English, French, and Spanish Wikipedia's conceptualizations of reliability as located in the pages themselves and as found in the lived experiences and perspectives of the editors, trainers, and educators make sense. And Mel will explain a little bit about what our findings are.
Yes, I'm going to explain the first finding, which is the lack of rigor of the guidelines. That's our main thesis. We argue that the guidelines themselves are unreliable. And in the report, we showcase how contextualized knowledges that matter to marginalized communities are subordinated or challenged by the definitions of reliable source. And this is due to the lack of rigor in the guidelines and their translations.
The second finding that we show is that silence as consensus is problematic. The lack of rigor that we describe is an outcome of reliance on the idea of community consensus as being the guiding principle to writing and upholding the editorial guidelines to begin with. And we show this rule is extremely problematic because of the premise that if you disagree, the onus is on you to say so. And this is a quote from the consensus description. Silence as a signal of consent in practice privileges those more experienced editors or those who feel comfortable participating in dialogues on the platform to begin with, and makes it more difficult to change the guidelines or to engage in conversation about them. We explain this at length in the report.
Finally, we want to uplift the essential role of trainers. Our research highlights their crucial role in fielding questions and providing a buffer between the platform and the interests of newcomers to Wikipedia, especially those who are prepared to contribute subject area specific content and/or strengthen the editorial procedures.
Out of this analysis, we propose several recommendations. And the recommendations are there to help us think about how we might enact a more inclusive and diverse Wikipedia in all 3 languages. And we believe these can also be extended to other language Wikipedias. We have recommendations that are grouped related to the contents of the reliable source guidelines in each language and those that connect to the community processes around the guidelines. And while these are interconnected, we pull them out for better understandability. Some of our recommendations include providing funding and resources to redevelop the guidelines. And we suggest doing this with a task force of a broader range of community stakeholders, including trainers, librarians, and academic and community-based subject matter experts. We suggest that a revisiting of the community user consensus definition and processes is crucial to thinking about enacting a more inclusive and diverse Wikipedia. We also suggest celebrating and uplifting the work of Wikipedia trainers and Wikipedians in residence who often do this work, including more direct support for trainer positions, especially given how consensus works at this time on Wikipedia. Finally, we also suggest thinking about enabling or finding a way to enable the visual editor or a WYSIWYG editor across all community pages in all platforms. And this would be talk pages and meta Wikimedia pages to facilitate broader engagement, as well as provide support and promotion to new features, such as tools for discussions. And this is something that's currently in beta. So all of these are ways that we hope our report can be a springboard to future action. And we thank you for your attention to this, for our funders, for Art+Feminism, for our advisory board, and for the participants in our community conversations. It's been a tremendous effort this year to bring this together. And we thank you for reading our report and thinking with us about these important questions.